Microphone, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Today is Wednesday, March 9th. It is 6:18 p.m. We are waiting on Governor Edwards. He will be speaking as soon as he can, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, microphone, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Do we need the right balance again, guys? Check 1, 2. Right balance. Microphone, check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You good? Yeah.
Wow, what brings y'all here? Now, thank you all for coming out tonight. Obviously, a lot of newsworthy events. I want to start with the storm that's up in North Louisiana right now. There's an awful lot of storm damage, a lot of people that are affected. In fact, we have people who have been evacuated from their homes because of flooding, levees overtopping, and I think in at least one case, a breach of a levee. I've been in constant contact today, among all the other things that we've been doing with GOSEP and with Colonel Jim Wascom, keeping apprised of the situation. He's been up on the ground. As of right now, there's been a disaster declaration issued by me for 16 parishes. We're going to continue to monitor that situation, and clearly our thoughts and prayers are with the people of North Louisiana, but so is our resources. And we're going to do everything we can to work with all of those individuals to make sure that they can get through this. But speaking of resources, it was a disaster declaration in 16 parishes and somewhat of a disaster here today as well. But we started out with a $940 million hole in the current year. As of right now, it appears that we're about $30 million short. So obviously that's a better number. We should not be short at all, but we are in the current year. On the other side, with respect to next fiscal year, we started off a little over $2 billion short, and right now we're $800 million short. That is going to be a very difficult number to absorb in cuts, and I will tell you that we will be in triage mode, trying to figure out exactly how to allocate those cuts out. I cannot give you that breakdown now. And in fact, because of the way the House and the Senate conducted their business over the last hour or so, I'm not sure anybody knows exactly what's left in the bills and what may have died on the calendar. But we are pretty confident that we're $800 million short. Now look, there were some members of the House and the Senate who did really great work. They took courageous votes. They stood up and tried to move forward and resolve our state's serious problems. How serious? The largest budget deficits in the history of our state. Unfortunately, there weren't enough, and it didn't get done to the extent that it should have. We had a balanced plan, a plan that was balanced between cuts and revenue, and on the revenue side, it was balanced because it allocated revenue increases across a broad spectrum of tax types and taxpayers. We called for shared sacrifice so that along with those revenue increases and the cuts, we could fully address the problem as it related to current year and to next year. Ultimately, the legislature was unable to move forward on that plan and did not offer a plan of its own that would close the gap. And so we are where we are, and it's going to be a very difficult process to go through that triage, as I just mentioned. At the end of the day, 18 of the 23 measures that I asked for were passed. We didn't get where we needed to, and the fact that we remain short for both this year in the amount of $30 million and next year for $800 million is because I was 18 for 23, as opposed to doing just a little bit better, which is what we should have done. Also, in addition to the legislators who worked hard, I want to thank those people from around the state of Louisiana, whether they're mothers or fathers of children who need waivers, whether they have other folks who need access to health care, whether it's Medicaid services or it's safety net hospitals, whether it's individuals who are concerned about higher education or K through 12 education. Those people, many of them, made their voices heard, and they communicated with their legislators. And I will tell you, the inability of the legislature to do its job should be no reflection on those people who worked so hard to try to make their concerns heard. So we have a lot of work left to do. We're going to start a regular session on Monday. That regular session obviously will pass a balanced budget for next year. That budget is going to start off with $800 million less general fund than we need if we simply wanted to do the services that we did in the current year. That number is big. And so it's going to be very difficult. We will have more information for you all. Probably sometime tomorrow you will get a notice of an additional press conference where we will have more to share with you in terms of how those cuts will be allocated when we come back into session. And the first thing that happens with respect to the budget bill is Jay Darden, the Commissioner of Administration, is going to go in and offer some amendments to the executive budget proposal that we've already put before the legislature. As you will recall, that executive budget proposal was $2 billion short. So we do have, obviously, more revenue to allocate and put into the budget. We're going to be going through that process. It's going to be a painstaking process, and we are not ready at this moment to tell you exactly what that's going to look like, but we hope to have some more information for you very shortly. So we could have done better. It is not a great day for the state of Louisiana, and I am as committed as ever as governor to make sure that I continue to work with everyone in the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans alike, and I don't want to leave out my two independent friends, so that we can take care of the people's business. We didn't do a very good job over this last 3 weeks, and thank goodness I gave them the extra 4 days because it seemed like they needed every single minute to get where we are. So with that, I will take a few questions, and then and like I said, we will be letting you know soon when the next press conference is going to be, so that we can give you some more information as we digest what was done and then allocate the revenue back into the budget. Greg?
Governor, do you expect to call lawmakers in for another special session following the regular session to address the $800 million?
I certainly don't rule that out. It is a distinct possibility. I'm not ready to announce that yet. I will tell you, and this is part of the problem, and which is why I never understood the lackadaisical attitude by so many in the legislature and the lack of a sense of urgency. We cannot have another special session before 6:01 p.m. on June the 14th. And so we have to fashion a budget between now and then with the revenue that's available that's going to be $800 million short. Because that number is so big, I can guarantee you that many institutions and agencies are going to have to move forward with large-scale cuts, reorganizations, and all sorts of things that are going to flow out of this, because they're not going to be able to wait until June to figure out what the final deal is and then execute those cuts in the 3 weeks that they will then have left between then and the end of the fiscal year on June the 30th. So it is a distinct possibility. I'm not ready to call it now, but quite frankly, Greg, there won't be any options on the table for people to consider that will be any more appetizing than those that we just went through and put before them. Maybe coming on the backside of some cuts, it will find a more receptive audience in the House, especially. So it might be something that we do. Tyler.
Governor, do you plan to go around the state and make the point clear, particularly the districts of those legislators who did not vote for the tax measures that you thought were needed to make the point of the potential cuts?
Well, you know, the democratic process works best when people are informed of how people behave. And so I would hope that they are taking it upon themselves to investigate and see how their members voted, and who's responsible for what's about to unfold in Louisiana. But having said that, I am committed to doing the dead-level best that I can, working with my administration and continuing to work with members of the House and the Senate to make sure that to the extent that we can, we fully protect the critical priorities of the state of Louisiana. I will tell you, it's not possible to do with $800 million less state general fund, but that doesn't mean we're excused from doing the best that we can, and we are going to do that. I call on the people of Louisiana. They can go to the legislative website, and they can see how their members voted on every instrument that came up in the legislature this session. Sue?
Governor, how concerned are you that some of the
Very. I don't know the rest of the question, but I'm very.
that some of the time limits that they put on these revenue raisers did not meet with the House's own rule to have it last 3 years, a rule you were part of when you were in the legislature?
Yeah, it's hard to work well with a group that doesn't want to follow its own rules. But the fact of the matter is, we have a fiscal session in 2017. I believe everyone agrees, and I certainly do, that we need comprehensive tax reform in 2017. That's why I was happy to support House Concurrent Resolution 11. That's why I met with members of the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, to agree to every item that was in that HCR so that we can get started sooner than later. And it actually sets up a group that's supposed to start meeting in September. I've told the leaders in the House and the Senate that if we're coming back next week, we can start next week. We should not wait till September, and we ought to be having meetings, and we ought to be studying this issue and finding out what we can agree upon, because obviously it doesn't work too well if you don't have enough time, which seems to be the case here. So I am very concerned about that for some practical reasons too. I have to imagine that when Moody's takes a look at what happened here today, they're not going to be impressed. And when they see that the revenue that was voted on, even though they're $800 million short, was of a very short duration. Doesn't even meet the definition of recurring revenue under our own rules. And it wasn't just that Moody's downgraded us. They put us on a negative watch going forward, which means they're looking to do it again. We've already received letters from Sachs telling us that they're very concerned about whether we have the funding in place so that the programs being offered at our higher education institutions can continue. And this is the sort of work that we get out of the legislature. Again, just examples of too much complacency, too much of a lackadaisical attitude. And quite frankly, I'll go back to where I was last week. We have too many members who refuse to lead, to follow, or get out of the way.
Governor, what's your message to students watching this around the state, or healthcare workers who are watching this, scratching their heads saying, hey, where does this leave me right now?
I was looking at a note someone just passed me. What'd you ask me?
So what's your message to healthcare workers or college students who are watching this across the state right now saying, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying, but where does this leave me now?
Well, I'm not prepared to say that today because we're going to come out and let people know how we think that these $800 million in cuts in state general fund should be allocated. We're going to do that in the next couple of days. I just want to reassure the people in Louisiana that I'm going to do the very best that I can, working with my administration and with the folks in the House and the Senate to make sure that we are as responsible and as prudent as we can be with these limited resources so that we protect to the maximum extent we possibly can our critical priorities. But that is not going to be possible with $800 million less. But I'm encouraging everyone to be optimistic that we are going to come together and fix this problem. It won't be on the timeline that it should have been because we're going to have to get through the regular session and get some distance on the other side of that before we can get there. I made a misstatement a while ago with respect to HCR 11. The study group does start right away, and we're supposed to have our report by September. But that study group doesn't have any members of the legislature participating in it. And what I'm calling on the members of the legislature to do is to go ahead and start working. as well, so that they are prepared to move forward just as fast as possible. Clancy?
Governor, in light of the few bills that did pass, do you see any way that this $800 million next year that has to be cut goes beyond or much beyond higher ed and healthcare? Or are we still going to be stuck with those two areas as a result of?
Well, as you know, we have not yet achieved structural reform. And so without structural reform, those cuts will almost surely be concentrated to a disproportionate degree upon higher education and healthcare. But cuts of this magnitude, the shortfall of this magnitude, are really going to impact just about every agency in state government. I am especially concerned, I will tell you tonight, about a number of agencies, but the Department of Corrections is among them. It runs on 100% state general fund dollars, and our ability to do what we should do there, I think, is going to be severely compromised. I know DCFS, and I'm naming agencies, but the truth is I'm very concerned about all of them based upon where we are.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Governor, how do you combat the disenfranchisement of residents who see the fact that there can't be, a compromise going forward? And so you're asking for people to buy in and to be optimistic, but when they see what's transpired here today, actions speak louder than words. So how do you get the people to buy in on what you're trying to do?
Well, I need the people to, if they're concerned about the failure of the legislature to compromise and find a way forward to comprehensively deal with this problem, they need to make that known to their legislators, first of all. But I'm always going to be optimistic about the future of Louisiana. This was not our best day. I cannot stress that enough. But maybe, although it should never be necessary, maybe when they come back into session and they start trying to put together a budget with $800 million less than we need just to deliver the same services, and they see how that impacts people, they will then develop the sense of urgency that was so obviously lacking, and then be more willing to compromise and to close the shortfall. And I just want to point out, we had a comprehensive, balanced plan. Ultimately, it didn't all get implemented. We did shave off most of the shortfall for next year, and clearly most for the current year. But I want to point out that over $1 billion for next year relates to the sales tax, whether it was cleaning pennies or adding a new penny. And there was a broad-based refusal by the legislature as a whole to move beyond that to other tax types and to other taxpayers in a meaningful way. We have to have a balanced approach. I called for shared sacrifice. Ultimately, that is not what we got. I called for us to come together, not as Republicans and Democrats, but Louisianans. Ultimately, we came up short on that measure as well. So I know that we can do better. I will continue to work to make sure that we do what we can to foster the environment so that this does not become Washington, D.C. It's quite possible that you just witnessed something that is evidence that we have taken a step in that direction. I will fight against it with every fiber of my being. We don't have long. We'll be back here Monday in a regular session, and hopefully we can serve the people better than we did in this special session. Thank you.